everyone. Welcome to another episode of Relate to You. We are so excited to see you guys again. I know that we had a little bit of a mix up one week where we didn't have an episode, so we apologize. That was on me. But we've missed you guys, and even though you guys have probably seen us like on a weekly basis, it's actually been a while since we've actually seen each other. So, hi to you guys. Today we're going to be talking about health and wellness and faith. And what kind of sparked up the conversation was that we obviously live in an age where we have so much information and we have so much access to medical help, medical attention, and that definitely creates kind of like this battle between faith and what does the doctor say, you know? And Lula and I are on very different spectrums when it comes to health and how we handle being sick or how we handle feeling a certain symptom. But basically what we're going to try to deconstruct today is where do we find the balance between going to the doctor or finding a method that's going to help us with our health and applying faith. And we're no longer, applying faith in this situation because we're leaning more on medication or a regimen or whatever. So my first question as we begin to, work on this is when you are sick, well, first of all, how often do you get sick would be my first question. And then what is your first go-to response? Is it going to the doctor or is there a specific thing that you do when you are sick?
I probably get sick about twice a year. And I probably have a 3 to 4 day recovery process. I don't think I've ever... Yeah, I don't think I've ever lasted longer than 4 days. Yes, con un cough or con un lingering cough or lingering moquitos. Yes, maybe tops a week and a half.
But like bedridden.
Pero bedridden un día.
Un día,
ajá. Y ya lo demás is like, okay, I still have some body aches, but I can move, I can do stuff. Ajá. Usually what I do to recover from that is I do not go to the doctor. I try to stay away from doctors as much as possible. It's not necessarily that I don't believe in the doctors per se. I don't believe in pharmaceutical ways. I believe in more natural ways of recovering. And so, también no soy de esas de las que si vas al doctor y te dice tienes cáncer and you're like, no, I do not, because you're a liar. No.
Right.
I know que también son doctores for a reason. They have, plenty of education and experience behind them to back that up. Pero I do think a veces there's a lot more business than moral duty for people.
Right.
And so I try to stay away from hospitals, doctors. What I do is, depending, pues, I'm assuming flu is
common cold,
common cold, the flu. Lo que hago es I go to the gym. I try to sweat it off as much as possible. And then I do take medication, but from Mexico. I don't take medication from here. I don't believe in Tylenol when you have the flu. I don't believe in Advil when you have the flu. I don't think they do nothing to you. I believe in paracetamol. I believe in, like good medicine. Que pues de una vez si te vas a meter de la farmacia, pues que sea buena. And it's been my experience that only medicina de México que de farmacia es buena. So yo me tomo eso. And then I do a lot of like immune system
booster type.
Yeah, booster. Yeah, that's the word. I do a lot of immune system booster medicine, or no medicine, pero shakes, green juices, so teas, pero que todo sea for the immune system.
Do you follow any of the myths of like no te bañes?
I do.
Put Vicks. Do you believe in Vicks?
I do. Not Vicks or Vaporub. No, I don't think I do a lot of that, but I do like sometimes, como por ejemplo, cuando traigo el throat que me duele, sí caliento una naranja y el calorcito de la naranja me lo
You put it.
tomo.
Oh, te lo
Ajá. Me lo
tomas.
tomo.
Oh, I was gonna like, oh, you put it.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
te lo tomas.
No, I don't know if you've ever heard, like, I don't know why my mom's like, cuando tú tienes un morete, pon tomate y sal y póntelo on tu morete. I've actually never done it, but she's always told me that. And I'm like, I don't understand how the tomate and the sal have anything to do with a morete, pero
There might be something there, there might be something there. So yes, I try not to shower at least that one day that I know I need to sweat it off, and opening my pores, por así decirlo, con el agua caliente might not be a good idea. Entonces, sí, I do follow some, ¿cómo le dices?
like myths, like old
Yes.
wives' tales. In a way.
Yes, yes. And then what else do I do that is kind of like
Are
myth?
you a baby when you're sick, or you're like, let's keep going?
Well, so depends who you ask. Porque Kelly and my sisters think that I'm a baby. That I am like, my mommy, cuídeme, mami, esto. I personally think that compared to other people, I'm very much like, no, let's take the
Let's
bull
go.
by the horns, let's go and let's do more and let's do this. But I also understand that within my family, yo soy la más chiqueada. Entonces, sí, I can see why Kelly would be like, no, dude, when you get sick, it's like, ay, no, pobrecita, todo el mundo stop what they're doing. Pero outside of that, other people
You're
would be like,
regular.
oh, dude, you do way too much. I would be at home, not doing much.
Yeah.
What about you, Kes? What about you?
I am the exact opposite of Lula. The exact opposite when it comes to health and wellness. How often do I get sick? Often. I get sick. As of this year, I got really sick in January, and then I got sick probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Notice how she knows. And does your friend know when you're sick? That is a really good standard. So I do get sick pretty often. I have asthma, and I have an inhaler with me all the time. And so I definitely have. So here's the thing. My mom was the kind of mom that would really believe in the urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was sick, it was just common knowledge. We're going to go to urgent care. Te van a dar un antibiótico y se te va a quitar. And so I grew up believing in medication. I grew up believing in specifically antibiotics. The antibiotics were going to help me get better faster. And so nowadays, when I get sick, I've evolved because of her. I used to be very, very, very skeptical of medication from Mexico because I'd never
exposed to it.
exposed to it. My mom was also not the kind of person, I think barely right now. She was like, oh, tómate este, it's like the little botellita that, ¿cómo se llama? I forget what it's called, but it has like an A, a B, and a C. And it's this little bottle that looks like a cervecita bottle, this tiny, and it's like 4 or 5. And you're supposed to take it once a week. And there's a sister that brings it from Mexico.
Is it Complejo B?
No.
No,
it's something else. El caso es que this is the first time. This is literally probably a month or 2 ago that she's actually been like, this is really good and it's from Mexico. But prior to this, she's never believed in medication from Mexico or anything like that. And then we were also kind of screwed with a lot of like natural, like believing in natural medications because of Herbalife. When Herbalife came about, there was a lot of people that we knew that were doing that were selling Herbalife and all of their products. And so that definitely, pyramid scheme definitely also affected our perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but as far as myself, when I'm sick, I wouldn't say that I go to the doctor as often now as I used to. Like before, It could be anything. Like, it could be anything from like I've been having a headache. Turns out, I was just dehydrated.
Didn't you just go to the doctor because you thought you had like spasms?
No, I wanted to go to the doctor for that. No, I
an
was.
MRI, right?
Yeah, I was. No. So the reason why I got a CT scan was because I was having really what I assumed was very abnormal headaches. I would felt like this throbbing pressure in my head, and I thought, no, this isn't normal. And I shouldn't say a big believer, but I am at fault, or it's my habit to tend to self-diagnose. And so it is always a stroke, it's always MS, it's always cancer, it's always Tourette's. And I will literally be like, oh my God, my head jerked there. Like, what just happened? Like, and it happens to me at work, and I know that it's because I stiffen up and all of that. And now I can walk myself out of it.
Guys,
but back in the day.
But dude, let's make a bracket here because it was hilarious. Because I'm the opposite. I don't look it up. If something's hurting, I'm like, rato se me quita, whatever. I don't pay much attention to certain things. So when I started working with Kes, and Kes would be like, oh my God, Lula, do you think this is normal? Like, have you ever had this? Have you ever had that? Have you ever felt this? And then I remember when she asked me about like when your head jerks, and I'm like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, I think so. I've had that. And she's like, yeah. 5 minutes goes by, we went silent, right? Next thing I know, she has this list on Google. Lula, I'm worried because it could be this, it could be. I'm like, oh my God, Chris, what are you doing? She's like, oh, you don't do this, you don't look it up. And I'm like, I do not. So that was my
100%.
first time
being exposed
to someone self-diagnosing in front of me, and I thought, How peculiar.
Very peculiar.
Very.
And it's funny, I had this conversation with my sister, not to throw her under the bus, but we're very similar. And we psych each other out, out of it, and we'll be like, I'm having palpitations. You're overweight. Okay. My head kind of jerked right now, and I felt like I wasn't in control of my movement. You're fine. You don't have Parkinson's. You're fine. So we'll psych each other out, but we'll both be like, do people just feel this and not care? Like, do they feel what we feel, or do we have all of these issues, underlying issues, and it's going to come out later? And, Joel's mentality is like, you are what you think. You are going to make yourself sick because you're constantly stressing about getting said thing that eventually, like, not that we believe in manifesting, but, in a sense, you are going to have that because after years of stress, ahora tienes alta presión, Mm-hmm. And so basically, I used to go to the doctor very often, very, very often for a lot of things. As mentioned, I got a CT scan, and I was totally fine. I was totally normal. I've always been normal. The most thing I've ever had is like slight anemia. Never even like where it's like concerning where I need blood transfusion. Just like, okay, you're a little low. We'll prescribe you some iron, medication. But there's never been anything concerning in my medical history. And Joel's always like, why don't you use your history to tell you,
Exactly.
Pero it goes back to the root, guys. It goes back to the root of the fear of dying.
True.
So anyways, I normally get sick probably about a week, a full week, and with lingering symptoms, like a lingering cough, a lingering headache or whatever. In the last 4 years, thanks to Lula, I've been more open to medications that are from Mexico. So I've definitely taken medication that make you sweat, or medication that, te corta la fiebre.
Uh-huh.
I forgot what you gave me this year, but me cortó la fiebre, like, and Joel's especially, which was crazy. I was a big believer in Tylenol. I still kind of am for certain things. If I absolutely have nothing in the house, I am a believer of Tylenol. Joel's a huge believer in ibuprofen. So those are the only ones we have. And then because of Pastor Rompepecho, sometimes we take Rompepecho. And Joel's a big believer in like Theraflu. He takes a lot of Theraflu. So it's one of those things where, as a viewer, you're like, the one on the left doesn't get sick often, and what are her methods? And the one on the right, what are her methods? So, I mean, obviously the evidence is there, that the methods that I use are not as effective. But I'm changing. Like if you were
But
to look at my fridge today, it looks very different than what it did back in the days. I'm not eating the same. I'm even taking ginger shots now. Like that's
oh
a
my
new
God, yes,
thing.
she is.
Like that's a new thing. So definitely come a long way. But that's
Yeah.
so far the
But
difference.
I think one thing to take in consideration is also childhood. Because
Lot.
I am a strong believer that the way you were raised also has a lot to do with your immunity, with your immune system. So we grew up, Kelly and I, and my sisters, but I feel more, no, Kelly and I, pues somos las que estamos closer in age. We grew up ensuciándonos. We grew up en la tierra. We grew up in very like harsh environment for your health.
Yeah.
We had to adapt and our immune system had to get stronger. Like it was just, you know, o sea, cuando eres pobre, you cannot afford to get sick. Entonces, ¿qué hace tu sistema inmune? Se fortalece. Se fortalece. And so, like, because we were exposed to so many, like, things, bad things, I feel like that's what made us more, or rather, that's what made us stronger and sturdier to, like, getting sick. And so, I think, and even the medicine too. I think even the medicine too, we obviously, pues como crecimos en Mexico, and I think that's one of the reasons why I have so much distrust with the pharmaceutical companies here, because here, to me, it seems like it's not just a business, obviously, but it seems like they want you to come back for more.
Right.
They're not gonna give you la cura. They're just gonna give you a band-aid to put on it so you can keep coming back and keep coming back, so you can be dependent on it. Versus in Mexico, because there's no regulations, which could also be a bad thing, right? Because anyone can come up with just a product and be like, here, this is gonna help you, and then you die. But I do think that because there's no regulations and so many people can do things in a lab, they try to do the best possible product out there so that it sells.
Yeah.
Entonces now you have a very good product that you take it and you're like, oh my God, this is wonderful. Me mejoré. And you go on with your life and now you recommend the product to so and so and so and so. Versus over here que solamente certain prescriptions are given,
right.
You know?
And then even pharmacists are very different in the U.S. than in other countries.
Right.
In Europe, a pharmacist is educated to tell you what are you feeling, what's wrong, what symptoms are you having. And I remember when we were in London, they told me like, okay, you know, I think I was having like a cold, or it was either cold or I needed pain medication, one of the two. The point is that they were like, okay, you know, what do you normally take? And I said, oh, well, you know, in the US it's either ibuprofen, Advil, or Tylenol. And she was like, but you're asthmatic, you shouldn't be taking ibuprofen. And I was like, oh. And they're like, we don't have ibuprofen or Advil or Tylenol, but we have the equivalent here based off of what you're saying that your condition is. This is what we would recommend. And I thought, again, like you go to the pharmacy and they're like, okay, your doctor sent this over, this is what you pick up. The pharmacist is just going to explain to you how to take the medication, but they really don't have a say as to this is what you should be taking. Right. They don't recommend anything. And I noticed that we also got medication in Greece, and same thing. They were very like, what do you have? What are you feeling? So I do think that because in those countries it's illegal to have a commercial for medication, you'll never see an ad for, oh, take this for depression or take this for anxiety, whereas the US you do.
Because it's a business.
It's a business.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you in that sense.
So and then, you know, I mean, not that we want to get political here, because I don't think our podcast is about politics. It's never been about that. But I do think that when COVID hit, that was a huge tell of how pharmaceutical companies are really out there for business. They're not really out there to care for the people's health.
Do you have the Pfizer? Do you have the Moderna?
I mean, dude, to pay people to get vaccinated, that I had never seen.
I think they were in the South. They were giving guns. if I'm not mistaken. In the South, I think it was Virginia or something like.
Well, I'm pretty sure. I mean, at some point, I heard people. I heard of people giving tacos to people. O sea, can you wrap your head around how much of a push it was for people to incentivize people to get a vaccine?
I mean, there's another thing that should be said, that if Lula wants to mention or not her medical history, I am a vaccinated individual. And in that sense, when COVID hit, I think it was definitely a huge, like, it was conflicting, I think, for Christians. Because on one end, this is happening, this pandemic is hitting our world, and people are dying. People are trying to keep their jobs. People are trying to do what they need to do, but they're being told you can't do it unless you get this vaccine. And then you bring in the whole, like, is this la marca de la bestia, And so there was this huge, like, should we, shouldn't we, is it safe? We don't know what they're putting in our bodies. I mean, it's also what's sparked up a lot of debate, with why mothers today are not vaccinating their children.
Right. Yeah.
Because back in the days, it wasn't even a question, you're gonna get the vaccine for chicken pox or whatever it is that you needed to get. There was no question. Ever since COVID, because of the push and because of the we don't know what's in this vaccine, that opened the door for a lot of mothers, a lot of individuals of like, I do not want to vaccinate my child. I don't know what's in this vaccination. I don't know what if it's the same. I mean, I've seen posts about, the Hep B vaccine. I've seen posts about, there's just so many things out there. There's like, it has baby fragments of fetuses or stuff like that. And there's just so many things out there that has caused a huge, like, distrust between us and the medical professionals and obviously pharmaceuticals. And so when COVID came out, I actually didn't get vaccinated for a whole year. And I was determined, I am not going to get vaccinated. I am not going to get vaccinated. And then we wanted to go to Europe. And I was like, we're not going to go to Europe till the following year. Like, by then, we're going to be fine. And we weren't sure if it was going to be fine or not. So I went and I had this, Lord, I mean, I can't like even get a job for certain places. At the time I was working at church. Obviously, pastor didn't have that requirement for us. But it's like, if I have a job anywhere else,
they're going to ask for it.
They're going to ask for it. And so it was a hard decision. And I went to Europe. Not a single country requested proof of vaccination. Not a single country cared if I was vaccinated. You know which place asked if we were vaccinated? Hawaii. That was it. That's the US. But like, we went to Italy, we went to France, we went to England, and we went to Greece. Not a single one asked if we were vaccinated. So I was mad about that. But at the time, it was just kind of like, it was hard to like figure out. There was this also like, should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? Right. Are we trusting in God? Are we not trusting in God by protecting ourselves? Like, and then there was, my family were really like, you will not see us if you've traveled. That was the hardest thing. And then Joel's family was like, nothing's changed. Like, it's just there's more places we can go out to see. So it was really hard at that time for me to find that balance when one family is just as faith-filled as the other, but they're very big on follow the restrictions, follow the guidelines. We're not supposed to be seeing each other 6 feet apart, masks, vaccinations, boosters. Do what you want, know? So how was that for you? Like, did you even like fear? Did you even, like, what was your experience and how has that influenced you today as far as like faith and like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to trust in God that I'm going to be protected? And like, where do you find that balance?
I think I owe it to my mom. My mom, ever since COVID hit, my mom was always like, mejor que nos dé a que no nos dé. Because my mom thinks in immune system terminology. Right. My mom thinks, si nos da, our body is going to create the immunity so that if it hits again, it's ready to protect against it. So our body does something beautiful that it remembers, or rather, your immune system, if it's a healthy immune system, it's supposed to remember the bacteria, it's supposed to remember the virus. So, pero primero te tienes que enfermar, right? You need to be exposed to it in order for your immune system to be like, let me study it. Let me see what this is made up of. And then once it studies it, and then, te mejoras y todo eso, it remembers. Okay,
Right.
I've seen this virus before. I know how to attack it. So my mom's whole thing during 2020, 2021, 2022 was that, que nos dé. No nos vamos a morir. And my mom was always like, yo tengo todas las medicinas disponibles para protegernos. O sea, worst case scenario, te da una fiebre que nunca te ha dado en tu vida, pero we know how to handle it. We know how to attack it. And so my mom también, like, it was there was faith in it too. My mom también decía, no, hija, no, esto es claramente miedo. Nos quieren meter miedo. Entonces, I guess, a mí nunca me dio miedo de que la gente se enfermara and to be around them. I was never afraid of getting sick. I was always of the mindset of like, pues si me enfermo, pues, I'll get better. I think what was hard was letting other people know that you were sick. Because then you weren't, out of nowhere, you were the pest. People treated you like the plague. And because I saw that, I was like, man, I don't want to be on the other end. Porque se miraba triste.
Yeah.
I mean, even
if... We're going to do a part 2.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. But, so as I was saying, I think I was more afraid of being seen and treated like the pest.
Yeah.
That's where I was more afraid. And then something interesting happened. I am an avid blood donor. So I remember one day during COVID, I went to donate blood and they asked me, have you gotten vaccinated? I said, no, I haven't. I'm like, good, don't. So las mismas enfermeras, I'm like, oh, okay. And then she said, we see here that you have antibodies for COVID. So that meant that I had gotten COVID at some point. I got, and they're saying you have antibodies. We checked in your blood that you have antibodies. So right now that's a lot of help for us. But if you get the vaccine, it might not be as great. So once I heard that, I'm like, wait a minute, how come these people that are also in the medical field are telling me to not get vaccinated when everyone else is pushing for that? And they're also telling me you have antibodies, and having antibodies is a very good thing. So much so that we want you to keep coming and donating blood. So then when that happened, I'm like, okay, for sure I'm not getting vaccinated. I don't care how much pushback there is. I don't, and then also I don't think I felt it within my family. All my sisters were like, no, we're not. We don't believe in it. COVID does exist because my sisters got COVID. They tested and some of them got COVID y todo eso. I'm 100% sure I got COVID as well. My mom got COVID as well.
But you also never got the symptoms that everybody did. You never told me that you couldn't taste, or that you a lot of the
yeah.
symptoms.
I know. But I do remember getting sick, and then I would test and it was negative. But in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I tested. But you know how some people were like, no, you need to double test, and you need to triple test, and you need to go to the actual testing sites. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But even then, I think for me, where I do think I might have gotten COVID, and it was such a very gnarly experience, it wasn't so much because I don't think I ever lost my sense of smell or taste. But for 2 weeks, I was just very depressed. Very, very depressed. I was just living to live in a way. And I think that's where, you know how people say that COVID, there's this theory that COVID targets where you have where your immunity is the lowest. Like for some people, si tenían mala ¿cómo se dice? Si estaban mal de la presión, se les subía o se les bajaba más con el COVID. Si estaban mal del azúcar, it was bad. Si estaba, like it just made, it just made things worse where you were already bad. So I think, not that I was like depressive or anything, but I do think because I've always dealt with emotions, I've always dealt with like, highs and lows. That's where it hit me the most. Or at least that's where I want to say that's where I started. Because even my mom and my sister Kelly were all on the same, like, kind of
down.
Yeah. And at some point we're like, what is this? Like, we need to come out of this. And but again, I'm glad that even during those times, my habits and my discipline never fail me.
It stayed the same.
It stayed the same.
I think, surprisingly enough, despite of my tendencies during the pandemic, I was just, I guess my mindset was like, if it hits us, it's gonna hit us. Like, there's nothing that we can do to avoid it. And maybe I should have carried that mentality. I mean, I think I have changed in some areas.
You have.
But I think there was this part of like, I can't stop living. And because I had just gotten married, we literally, it was the year we got married. Like, in my head, it's like, I wanted to go to our honeymoon. I wanted to spend time with Joel. I wanted us to have a happy first year of our marriage. So I didn't want to be depressed and shunned from the world. I think it helped that, we were still able to see each other for the most part. We had outside services. Like, there was still things that we did to find some sort of connection.
Right.
Despite of all the regulations that we had to do. Where I think a lot of it was hard for me was like during my wedding. Obviously we had to downscale, which I don't regret it. I'm thankful for the small wedding. But it was a huge shift,
Yeah, absolutely.
And during that whole wedding, I had sisters who didn't even go to my wedding. And it was like, because they were really firm in what they, were standing for. I have to think about my kids. I have to think about my family. And that was hard for me, that I had to learn to accept that it's not about me. It's not about, yes, I might think this is the most important day of my life, but it's like, that's where they were at. And that's where a lot of people were at in terms of how they were handling the situation. Where I think I came to a lot of like my peace was that in my dad's case, we tried to take care of him as much as we could. Somehow my family got COVID. And they were so like hyper protected. And they even tried to isolate my dad to ensure that he didn't get sick. Like, my mom was even like happy, like, thank God, like we protected him. He's not going to get sick. But he got sick and he got COVID and he had a really bad experience. He had scarring in his lungs. He had to be intubated and he passed away. And so he was an actual case of someone who passed away because of COVID. And despite of the fact that could have been more reason for me to be afraid of the virus, it did the opposite for me, because it's like, for a whole year, my family protected themselves. For a whole year, they did everything they could to not get sick, to not be around people, to avoid even me. And he still managed to get the virus. Right. It still took his life. And not that that's an excuse for me to be reckless, but in a sense, it's like, I didn't want to live my life afraid of traveling or living my life, because it was one of those things of like, de nada sirvió. De nada sirvió at the end of the day, and he still passed away. Right. So at the end of the day, it's like, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen. And so now my relationship with health is that I've gone to the doctor a lot less, believe it or not.
Yes. No, I believe it.
I have gone. I mean, obviously I've had to go for certain reasons, but like, I haven't been like, oh, me siento esto, I'm going to go to the doctor. I've tried to, I mean, Lula's now my little doctor. I tried to, work different things. I mean, yes, I still sometimes Google. That's kind of a habit. But for a lot of things, like I pray,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the faith comes in, where I have to learn to trust God with my health. And it is a hard thing for me because it's a weird thing that I think I control, even though I don't. But I have to let it go and be like, God, if I'm really going to die from this headache,
Let it be you.
then there's nothing I can do.
Right.
And then because I've been to the urgent cares and the hospitals before, it's like they're not going to help me. Like I'm going to go and I'm going to be in an ER for 3 to 5 hours waiting until they see me, because I'm not an emergency case. I'm not screaming bloody murder because I don't have a broken arm or
Yeah, you're not bleeding
I'm not
anywhere.
bleeding out. And so it's like, you have a headache? Okay, well, we'll get to you at some point. And so it's like, I also know that, like, if I really need something urgent, yeah, me voy a ir a las 5 de la mañana a hacer línea, but it's happening less and less.
Listen, right? Absolutely. I think another thing, and we've talked about this before, so it's not like I'm ousting you or anything. But I remember that when we started working, Kiz there were times where she would leave because she would get a migraine, and that was the okay. I had been exposed to people getting migraines. I have two of my sisters. They get migraines, and I know they throw up. They feel super lightheaded and super dizzy. It's bad. It's bad, and then it's a pounding, like it's bad. I know.
Yeah.
So I had seen that. I had been exposed. I am exposed to that, but I get the amount of times you did it when I first started working there. I thought, wow, like, you know,
Delicada.
yeah, and and then I really thought, wow, there's some benefits to working at church. But then I remember that after like what, a year, you stopped doing that, and then
Yeah.
and then you would still get headaches, and you would tell me, I'm a little bit like, not feeling well y todo eso. But I do know that you started drinking a lot more water. You started drinking a lot more water, and I feel like that helped.
I definitely did.
And then I feel like there was a point where I don't know if you brought it up or I brought it up, but I told you, have you noticed that you haven't left because you have a migraine?
Yeah, I think you brought it up.
Yeah. And you were like, oh my God, that is true.
I mean, this year, guys, to see, I'm not completely changed, but this year was the first time I had an appointment I had to go to, and I had an actual migraine at the appointment. I've always managed to be able to leave and go home and lay down. This year I asked you to pick me up because
Right,
it was
that is
that
true.
bad, and she picked me up and she took me to work because I couldn't drive. And I've never allowed myself to feel a migraine with people around because I know I'm going to throw up.
Yeah,
I know that I can't see. I'm seeing the floaters. I'm having so much pain. And so I know that I can't function at work. And so I don't even give myself the opportunity to feel the pain. And so what happened is that I had a very important appointment that I could not miss. I had taken time off work to be at this appointment. I had to be there. And I'm in the lobby and I'm like, babe, I can't see. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm going to have a migraine. I start to see the floaters, which blurs my vision. And I'm like, oh my God. And I feel the panic because I get scared when it happens. And I'm like, Angel's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I can't leave. And he's like, you're going to have to push through it. And Joel is hasta eso que, like, I love him. He's like a balance. He's like, sometimes he's like affectionate and you're going to be fine. And there other times he's like, all right, like,
Get to it.
I am talking to the doctor. I cannot see her with this eye. And I'm talking to her about what's going on with me. And I'm having this full on, conversation. I have to visibly present myself as a normal individual while I'm having a migraine. And I don't know how I stayed. I got blood work with the migraine. And then I left in the car and I was like, babe, stop the car. Threw up. And then we came home. And Joel was like, babe,
I'm proud of
you had a migraine out in public. I am very proud of you.
Wow.
And even for me, it did give me a sense of pride.
Of course.
Because I was like, man, for me, That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal for Kez. I was out and about and I survived and I was okay. And then there was this delusional reality of like, do people have migraines and they do life normally? Yes, obviously they do, you know? But for me, como soy bien delicada, I was like, no. I can't feel anything out in public. So I think now I have a more of like, if it happens, it's like, no me voy a morir.
That mentality, right? Like, if it happens, no me voy a morir. And I feel like I grew up with that mentality. Por eso no voy al doctor. You know, pero I do think que tiene que haber un balance.
Claro.
Porque también alguien que
no se cuida.
Que no se cuida o que no va al doctor or someone that disregards, heck, early signs of cancer, let's say, or early signs of something else.
Diabetes.
Ajá. Entonces, también no puedo ir por la vida diciendo, al rato se me quita ese dolor. No sé qué sea, pero whatever, you know. No. At some point I have to be like, you know what? It's lasted for like 3 months and it doesn't go away. I need to get checked. I need to get that checked, you know, and do something about it. Porque tampoco creo en que ya porque le digo a mi cuerpo que no estoy enferma, se me va a quitar, you know. It's just, I mean, Dios puede y por su gracia puede pasar, pero también I think we've said it we've said it enough times. No podemos, you know, I cannot pray to God, heal me, God, que no sea nada malo. Y seguir comiendo cosas que me dañan, seguir haciendo cosas que me dañan, tener hábitos malos. O sea, you know, you cannot pray for an A and study for a C. It's just, that can't happen.
That's good.
You know? Entonces, también tiene que haber un balance. Tenemos que hacer nuestra parte, pero también dejar cosas en las manos de Dios.
Pero como dices, sí tiene mucho que ver que en cómo te criaron, porque mi mamá... que amo con toda mi alma, sí era así como, ella creció con una mentalidad que las mujeres son bien frágiles. So, si tenía cólicos, acuéstate. Si tenía un dolor de cabeza, acuéstate. You know, it was always, porque ella como tenía much more severe case of asthma than we have ever had, that's how they raised her.
Right.
Like, tú estás enfermiza, acuéstate, no hagas mucho ejercicio. It's why she never let us do sports, because una mujer se tiene que cuidar. So, I grew up with, ponte tu chaqueta, y no te voy a hacer esto, y no te voy a hacer lo otro. Entonces, there was this fear of a lot of things, and y aún con la chaqueta me enfermaba, you know, and then cuando me pasaban cosas, cuando ya me casé, you know, mi mamá aún me decía, pero mija, si tú te sientes mal, acuéstate. Y Joel is like, why are you laying down? Like, what's wrong with you? I have a headache. And? Like it was a culture shock for him,
right,
you know, because he grew up with like, sweat it out, go forget about it. You got to still do what you got to do. Obviously, he's a guy, but even my sister-in-laws are very tough, very, very tough. So when he saw me and self-diagnosing, and he would tell me, like, did you Google? Did you Google? Why do you Google? Why do you do that? And then he would even say, babe, like, you remember when you used to have a migraine all the time? Like, even he's seen the progression.
Right.
But I do think that because of my experience and how I'm slowly evolving, I will be a different mother.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want my kids to grow up to be delicate. And because even though I was delicate, I'm still more sick than you. Like, it does, like, in a sense, it's like you've protected yourself so much, se supone that you should be stronger, and I have a weaker system.
And that's I think that's the mistake a lot of people did during COVID. Que they protected themselves so much, hasta en lo que comían. I mean, I heard of people going vegan porque to avoid getting COVID or whatever.
Yeah.
And then guess what? Se acaba COVID, quote unquote COVID, y ya podemos salir al mundo, and these people are getting sick. These people have no immunity, have no immune system, have no strong immune system, no immune system that remembers the virus. And so now it's hitting them twice as hard. And then now they're not just getting sick I don't know which version of COVID we're on, but they're getting sick of other things. And it's always been my belief that in order for your immune system to get stronger, you need to get sick. You need to get exposed to things. And I think, man, all those years of eating tierra are paying off. Are paying off right now. So,
and all in all, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, I definitely think what we're trying to convey is that where do you find the balance in it? You know, where do you find the balance between I am going to go to the doctor, I'm not going to go to the doctor, and then as Christians you begin to apply your faith. There's been times that, you know, I question myself, like, why is my first or my first thought something horrible is happening to me because I'm feeling X symptom, and why isn't my reaction, Lord help me, you know, Lord take this away, Lord protect me if this is something serious, you know. And I do think that, again, that's where my struggle comes in with my faith, where I tend to take God out of the equation when it comes to health, because there is so much information, because there's so much access to, hey, what does this mean, you know. And now you have Google Scan. So, like,
Wait.
I have a mole. Is that melanoma? Let me take a picture and see if it matches other moles. That's a whole nother world.
No,
That's a whole
really?
nother world. You best believe that I will be
Oh,
searching.
no.
This mole, has it enlarged? Does it look green? Because that's usually the signs. And now you have Google Scan. So you can scan anything. And so, like, I will literally be like, oh, does that look concerning? I even do it with, I recently did it for we went to San Diego and Joel was playing with these frogs, and I was like, don't touch them. On Instagram, someone posted that they touched this really weird blue creature and it was poisonous and they were hospitalized. Don't touch it yet. Let me scan it. Okay, it's a frog it was the Baja California frog. And I was like, all right, you can touch it. And it will
Okay.
literally scan it for you.
I can see how useful and helpful it could be, but at the same time, and that's another spiral.
It's another rabbit hole. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So yes, you have to use it
Jesus.
with caution. But yeah, tendencies. Maybe here in 4 years, I'll be like, Google what? But yeah.
Oh my God. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being with us for this, I would say, short episodes.
What is your green juice remedy? Tell us what your ingredients are in the comments.
Right. Yeah.
What do
'Cause,
you do when you're sick?
yeah. What do you guys do when you're sick? You know, do you just pray over it and pray it off? Or do you go to the doctor? Or, you know, you tough it up and you're like, no tengo nada.
No pasa nada.
No pasa nada. All right. Entonces, let us know in the comment section or in the Instagram, however you feel more comfortable. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.